Well, cool. I just started the recording. Thanks for being flexible. I know we've had some tech issues here back and forth, but welcome, David. I'm honestly I'm so pumped to chat with you. Um, I know you've been posting some really cool stuff on Instagram, and I've been following your posts and reels and messages for quite some time. I don't actually know quite how to refer to you. Your bio calls yourself an evolutionist, which I love. I don't know exactly what that means, um, but I feel like you're here to just kind of shed wisdom and help people and teach people, and it feels good every time I read your posts, reels, messages, whatever it is. It's always just something that feels good. So I appreciate you doing that. I appreciate you sharing. And before we get into some stuff, just want to set an intention for just kind of sharing today, being vulnerable. This is a safe space, judgment-free zone. Again, I appreciate you doing this and um, sharing your wisdom with others and in our tech Zoom space here today. So I'm really curious to see where this goes. I've got some stuff prepped, but honestly, I'm open to it going wherever it needs to go because I just feel like that's kind of your energy and your vibe, and it's also mine too. So I'm excited about
Absolutely,
that.
absolutely, absolutely. Now, shall I turn the phone horizontal? I don't know if this is right. You're horizontal on my end.
It actually looks nice on my end. If it's coming across weird on yours, probably the phone thing.
No,
But
it's
this
okay.
is, yeah.
I just asked because for aesthetic purposes on your end, whatever you feel is okay. All right. Okay, fire away, sir.
All right. Well, also, it's really cool to start just seeing your Zoom tagline. It has your name and then in parentheses God, which is really interesting. We can get into
Oh,
that in a little bit. But um,
I didn't know it
so
had that. I didn't know it had that on my Zoom. Someone else referenced that, and I forgot that they referenced that because we ended up doing a whole podcast. But I didn't even remember when I put that on there.
oh, I love it. I love it. So I guess we'll start. Honestly, I was kind of going through and I've seen so many of your posts and so many of your messages, trying to pick out at least a couple that spoke to me. Feel free to bring up, of course, any that kind of speak to you or that you have top of mind. There's one that I kind of want to dig into a little bit. This is pertinent for me. Recently, it's come up in themes of relationships and just working with people. And I feel this in the midst of my own work. And I know a lot of people I'm talking to right now. But I'll quote you here. Is I think one of your most recent posts, or at least from a little bit ago, it says, quote, whatever you hold against your parents, whatever you wanted from them or still want from them, is the cause of your effect of much else in life that upsets and disturbs you, and especially your relationships. Until you come to the resolved self, you can't ever find peace within yourself or someone else. Um, and I was just like, wow, when I read that, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And yeah, I'd love to hear more from you about that.
It's pretty much the quintessential cause of the effect of every single person's life. And um, regardless of all of us have been subjected to varying degrees of being parented in the conditionings, programmings, whatever you want to think, there's a lot more behind it than most people can remember. And so due to the systems that we live under, the patriarchy and nuclear family, which in itself is dysfunctional, and this is another thing that people do not understand, that we're supposed to be raised in communities and tribes. You were supposed to be raised
Mm,
with eight uncles, eight aunts, 15, 20 grandparents, children all around you, all different ages. You were attended to 24/7. Your parents always had assistance, always had help. They were never frustrated, never impatient,
mm,
always had someone there to take over and assist. So, that being said, the nuclear family is very dysfunctional. It's a bit of a stress. So we're all affected by how we were raised to varying degrees, whether we were physically abused, mentally and emotionally abused, or just put under loud voices, or addiction, or however fraught it was. We create interpretations of our environment of our parents, and those interpretations of their behaviors create perceptions and beliefs within ourselves and about them.
Mm.
And so we have a belief and hold something against them to varying degrees. And we have a belief that we held against ourselves, limiting beliefs, and we label these wounds and traumas. And they're just labels, but they're really, people were behaving.
Mm.
Our parents were behaving the way they were behaving, regardless of, they also had a very fraught upbringing, and most of our parents had a much tougher upbringing than us. They were working in the best they could as children. Then they grow up, have children. There's no education of parenting whatsoever, no education of relationships whatsoever. So they do their very best, regardless
Right.
of what they do their very best. But we, as little children, all we know and all we want is to be seen, to be met, to be heard, to be loved. And we expect, coming from each child, again, this is my perspective, that we
Mm-hmm.
just know the unconditional.
Mm.
And of
You mean
course,
coming into this world, that's just naturally
yeah,
something. Yeah.
we come in. All right, let's put it this way: we're in the womb. It's pretty blissful. We come out. I'm kind of short paraphrasing this. We come out, and then most of us, majority of us, are taken to the breast. And even if we're not breastfed, we're held against mum, naked mum. So you imagine naked flesh. You're being held. You're being
Mm.
soothed. You're being met. You're being seen. It's pretty unconditional. That's your imprint.
Mm.
That's your inception imprint of life, is this unconditional. And that heartbeat that held to mother, that's what you
Mm.
felt in the womb. So now we get bereft from the breast, and now we're subjected to specific conditionings of our individual family,
Mm-hmm.
however many siblings, however our parents are in their relationship. And from that, we do our best because we're innocent. We interpret what's going on around us, and those interpretations create
Mm-hmm.
thoughts, feelings, perceptions, beliefs about ourselves and about them.
And
And
how much do you think the interpretations there? Because I've talked to a lot of people about this recently, but there's this conversation, nature versus nurture. Obviously, you come out, you have the community, you have the mother looking after you. How much of that interpretation do you think is like genetically hardwired in us? We interpret it a certain way, or is that from birth, our parents, our family, our tribe gives us the filters for which we interpret the natural world?
we can only interpret through, again, I believe the interpretation is done through the nurturing. So again, if that nurturing is soft,
Mm.
is gentle, is not loud in any way, we are getting nurtured in that nature of
That provides that space.
whatever
Yeah.
provides that space. Unfortunately, for the majority of humans, it's a stressful thing for a new baby. There's sleepless nights. There's doesn't matter how much money you have, you're still dealing with a newborn. I speak to people all day long about parenting and about their lives, and they have no idea how to contend with it, how to deal with it. And
Right.
the slightest impatience, the slightest frustration, you've got a mother and father who are communicating together. If their communication isn't soft and gentle and they get frustrated and they raise their
Mm-hmm.
voices, that baby interprets their tones,
Mm-hmm.
takes that energetic on. So it's all about how the home is specifically, but the child, I say, starts to interpret from the baseline of unconditional love. Everything then is an interpretation of, look, it's now been proven when you're in the belly of your mother, if there's anger and violence going on with aggression between the mother and father, that baby feels it, doesn't know, you just feel it. It's going into their nervous system, into their blood system. So
Right.
before you're even born, you're taking on your parents' environment.
And that's
So
so much of our life's work, isn't it? I mean, as you get older and older, you realize how much of your life and your emotions, your feelings, your thoughts, we'll get to the mirror concept in a little bit, but just how much your life has been impacted or affected by those early years, your parents, even before you're born in the womb. And so much of life is accepting, tolerating, having non-judgment for your parents or for that situation, and just kind of becoming at peace with that somehow, right? Because just knowing you're a helpless little kid, you have absolutely no impact or control on how those early years happened, and even before you were born in the womb. So I know that's a lot of our journeys, is just getting to a place of like, okay, I know that my life is like this, and I was affected in so many different ways, and it had nothing to do with me, or at least I was a helpless child in those
Yeah, I
early
mean,
years.
and again, depending on your belief systems, if you want to believe that, the journey of the soul is you pick these parents, then you're already in an advantage, that you know that you pick these parents, and however, whatever you're subjected to is your karma, is your samskaras in life, are all your lessons to learn. If you don't know that and you don't want to believe that, you can just say, all right, I've got a lot of stuff to learn here because I interpreted things and created beliefs and understandings about myself. And now I have to come to a better place within myself. Therefore, you don't need to go into a spiritual context. You can just understand that once upon a time, I was a baby full of joy, full of love, no identity, no character, no personality. I had no resentments, no hates. I didn't know I was a boy and girl. I didn't know my religion. I didn't know my identity. I didn't know my nationality, my color. And now I have all these thoughts and feelings and identities and identifications.
Mm,
Well, they are a construct. So you can't deny this. So now you have an understanding that you're a construct and that everything in your life is affected by this construct. You are affected by your beliefs about yourself. So now we can go, okay, if life is having a lot of upsets and disturbs, they are in regards to the construct, because once upon a time, I was me, fully, totally, wholly me as a baby, and I had no disturbs, no upsets. I wanted to peep and poop, needed some boob and sleep. Other than that, love, love, love. Everything else that wasn't love created interpretations, perceptions, and beliefs within myself, about
mm.
myself, and about the outside world. We want to be safe. In essence, we are fight or flight, and we want to be safe. We're trying to survive. And we were relying and depending on these two godlike figures, hopefully two, mother and father, to feel safe.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do subscribe to the spiritual realm. I know a lot of the folks listening, and I know you, I think you're making it uh, I guess, swallowable, or a swallowable pill to people talking about either the spiritual world or not. But I think coming from a spiritual ownership consciousness for me is always healthier place to start than sort of the victim consciousness. Oh, this is happening to me, and all these things happen. I'm
Mm.
trying to come from a place of trying to survive, because I think um, explaining life in that way is a really difficult pill to swallow. Of just, oh, I come here, life sucks, and I'm just trying to get over it and be happy from moment to moment, versus, okay, I know my soul is journeying across all these dimensions. I've had past lives, I'm now in this life, and I have some spiritual baggage and things to work on. And what is my what is my work in this life? And we purposefully pick our parents, we purposefully pick our relationships, our partners, our people. That kind of, I guess, leads to the next quote or concept that you post and talk kind of a lot about, and I appreciate it. It's getting into the mirror concept, but it's mostly one of your, I think it was one of your latest posts, actually, uh, quote unquote, you said the greatest delusion of the great illusion is that you believe you are human. And I love that, because I think that takes us right into the spiritual conversation.
So let's just say, unlike what everybody thinks, we're a human with a soul, we're actually a soul having a human experience. I mean, I could go into the dynamics of science in regards to this. Go read Meta-Human by Deepak Chopra, and he breaks the biological, physiological system down into what's going on. And it literally, when you finish that book, you realize this is a virtual reality. Science is now telling us this is close to some virtual reality type video game that our souls
Mm.
having a ride in. So on that level, the fact that I believe that I am my name, I am my religion, I am my national, no, these are all again I was a baby. I didn't know any of it, but I was whole, fully me. There's no denying that.
Mm,
I had no construct. I had no beliefs, no perceptions. Now I have beliefs, I have perceptions, I have a
mm-hmm.
character, a personality, and identity. I have them.
Mm,
I have a book. They are not who
yeah.
I am. Therefore, who I am was the essence before I got them.
Mm,
So on an understanding of getting to the mirror, that little Jewish Palestinian man 2,000 years ago, Yeshua, and they named him Jesus for marketing purposes. He said, only the children will enter the kingdom, i.e., to get to that joyful, wonderful heaven within us,
mm,
Zen, whatever you want to call it, Christ consciousness, Zen, Buddha consciousness. We have to go through the whole construct
mm,
that we've built since we were children and free of the construct. And therefore, how do I do that? Well, life is a school of mirrors. When I was that baby, nothing would disturb and upset me. I couldn't have resentments, anger, unforgiving, couldn't have anything because I was this clean slate of unconditional love,
mm,
let's say. So now I construct everything that blinds that. Once was
yeah.
blind, now I can see.
Pure, innocent baby.
Pure, innocent, joyful, loving baby. And then all the crap constructs on top of that. Now I'm built with all the homework for my journey through life, and life is a mirror. Everybody is a mirror. Everything is a mirror showing me to me. I think Wayne Dyer said, you get an orange, you squeeze an orange. What
Uh-huh.
comes out of it? Orange juice. Nothing else can ever come out. So when life squeezes us, when we say, I'm triggered, what comes out is what's in there, is that construct since your child.
Mm,
We know that there is Zen. We know that with practice, a Zen Buddhist monk or anyone who wants to practice Zen can come to real peaceful, loving place. Oh, we know this exists. We know Buddha consciousness exists. We know Christ consciousness exists. We're now in this place and space and time where everybody can get an education, whether you want to believe in spirituality or not, where there is a map and an understanding to utilize life, the school of life, and its mirrors. Whereas
mm-hmm,
when I feel something that upsets and disturbs me, I can navigate and translate back to, instead of
mm-hmm.
pointing, they,
Right.
he, she. Oh, what's that feeling?
Uh-huh.
What's the feeling? Now I can unravel and move into the feeling, move through the feeling, where instead I could be angry for however long and I can dissolve it. And the more I do that, more and more and more about this, that, and the other, teachers and lessons everywhere, mirrors everywhere, I do the work. I start to realize, again, another quote from Yeshua, to be in this world but not of this world means that I live in the world, and all the things that used to upset me and piss me off and disturb me, they don't touch me anymore.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective because I guess like just listening to that, and if I subscribe to that, I guess I would ask, or someone would ask, like, sort of, what's the point? You know, I guess you come here as a pure, innocent, loving, unconditional, loving baby, right? No
Mm.
filters, nothing wrong. You're pure light, pure energy, and you have now you're grown up. You have all the filters of the world, society. You now are inhibiting yourself. You're now developing these negative, quote unquote, negative emotions and fears and anxieties, all these things, in an effort then ultimately to use the mirrors that are cast upon you in this life to end sort of where you started. Now, would you argue like that's the goal? I mean, basically, like the cycle of life, you end where you start. People would say, well, if you think about it, an older man, an older person, they really kind of sometimes remind you of a baby. Some you lose your speech, you lose your movement, you kind of revert back to this almost like baby-like state. So is that the point? You start from your energy, light, love, scratch, and you kind of end that way, and you go through this school of life.
Well, let's just say you're born into love, as we've explained, and you're going to die back into love. So why not live in as much love as possible, and as much love and as much peace? Why do you want to rest in peace when you're dead? It's pretty futile. So on that level, I get to maybe live with that much less suffering. Buddha said life is suffering, i.e., if you don't know you've got a choice, you're going to live taking unconscious victim choices. If you know you've got a choice
Right.
and you can actually find more peace, more compassion, more love, understanding, and forgiveness. Wow, now I get to live.
Mm.
I get to live that way instead of being disturbed, upset, suffering, having
Because it feels
unforgiving
better.
resentments, jealousies. It's just a much better journey
Yeah.
to live. And on a grander scale, I do this work and now I become who I am. I am assisting people daily in private work. I'm on different podcasts. My, let's just say, whatever it is, following is going up. More people are getting influenced. I write a book. My book is selling well. Now more people are doing the work and more people are finding more love, more peace, more joy. Guess what? They influence other people. They become an example to their children. And this is how we go from my kingdom within. Only
Mm.
the children will enter the kingdom. The kingdom is within. As I do the work and I become more loving, peaceful, compassionate, and forgiving, more people take that energetic on. I'm an example. I shine my light. I have to go through my
Mm.
darkness to get to my light. And this is what's happening on the planet. That's why you're doing this podcast. That's why I'm on this podcast. More people get a greater understanding. They get to live lighter, brighter, enlightening the self. It is what they were trying to tell us thousands of years ago. But guess what? They crucified the man that tried to give us love, peace, and unity and the education to
Mm.
get there. And Buddha himself was not a Buddhist. He died. And then they indoctrinated his words into a religion. It's not a religion. Jesus's words were not a religion. They're a way of life, a way of being, a way of seeing, where we come to our own sovereignty within. So my journey becomes more beautiful, more peaceful, more loving. Everyone around me gets affected. And therefore, why would I not choose this? I get it.
Mm.
It's very courageous work because it means going into your darkest aspects.
I think, yeah. I mean, if you go back to I think I forget who you said, Wayne Dwyer, kind of the analogy of the orange. You squeeze the orange,
Yeah.
you get out whatever's inside. I think the point is, and the difficulty is for a lot of people, for really anyone. I mean, the whole point of life is you start with a perfect orange and you go through, sticking with this analogy, the inside of the orange becomes dirtied or loses its juice or whatever the analogy is over life. It kind of we get tested. We have these mirrors that bring shit. I mean, the
Yeah.
orange gets dirtied, and so it sounds like part of the goal is to try to, as life is squeezing the orange, try to have as much juice or the cleanest juice inside that as it comes out, we can spread the love and the positivity. And I guess you really, I mean, I know from my own spiritual journey, like it's so helpful to have the why behind it. Why? Because that's the hardest thing, to go in to clean the orange, if we're sticking with that analogy, to really see the shit. You have to be motivated to do that. And I always go back to, because it feels better. That's like the simplest. There's so much spirituality we can cover. There's all these different Buddhism and Judaism and Kabbalism. I mean, there's so many things, and sometimes it gets convoluted for people. And I think the simplest place to go back to is because it feels better, because there's an internal knowing that it's right. And if also by feeling better and doing this work, other people will feel better too. And that's really all you need, is the motivation to quote unquote clean your orange, I think.
It's actually, again, it's funny. I was listening to what you're saying. Oranges are sweet. They're sweet. They're really
Sometimes.
sweet. Now, I
Yeah.
like what you said, dirtied it, but then that made me think, to varying degrees, you
Uh-huh.
are bittering and souring the sweetness of
Yeah.
your natural orange. So, to how much you don't realize it, you have had started off with this beautiful, sweet, juicy orange, and that juicy orange then becomes very bitter, very sour, very
Mm.
unhappy. So that's it. Let's get back to the sweetest we can possibly be. And I don't think people realize, although more and more are, this education is out there, but yeah, you know what? I can actually change who I am. I can actually live a sweeter life. Oh, okay. How do I do that? How do
Yeah.
I do that? So
Yeah. We
that's
get so
that's the
stuck in
journey
our
is
habits.
learning. learning how to navigate a life again like a new language, because we have a media that we have been indoctrinated and programmed and conditioned by since children to operate
Mhm.
in an unconscious, unaware life, i.e., TV, movies, cartoons, Disney, Hallmark have all been operating the, let's say, the old-fashioned way, the unconscious way, the non-spiritual way, whereas life perpetuates dysfunction and blindness, and therefore everybody thinks dysfunction and blindness is actually normal, whereas I see normality as the greatest delusional dysfunction. And
Mm,
so this is why, going back to your quote, humanity is delusional. It is. What we consider to be normal is absolute insanity.
mm. It's
And
just being
and
constantly shown to us everywhere we look.
and it's normal.
Yeah.
We watch how people relate on TV and in movies and cartoons. We watch how people argue. We watch how people parent. And so it's normalized and perpetuated. And so we believe that that's what life
Mm.
is. And as
And
we
why
start
do you think that's there? I mean, this is literally called the Conscious Creators Podcast. Like, why is that there? Is that because there's unconscious things in people and larger motivations, or is that just a whole different subscribing to life in a whole different way? Or why are all those, I guess, filters there to kind of keep us distracted or not
well,
being in touch with the truth?
you know, society was already dysfunctional before we had our technological media.
Mm,
And if in the ages of history, the dictators, the tyrants, the kings, the queens, the governments, if you didn't, and the church, if you didn't pull and do as
mm,
they said and do, you're dead.
yeah, is the end of you.
They crucified Jesus for threatening the status quo. He was offering sovereignty, unity, love, and they didn't like that, so they got rid of him.
Mm,
Now, they did that to the witches. Everybody in history that was bringing love that threatened the status quo of power. So there was still manipulation going on of the human psyche through fear and control. And now we had this media, and I think it was just representing what life already was, which was already dysfunctional. I don't know. And then I do believe to certain degrees it became insidious with programming. This is known if you look into it and investigate. But it's just the fact that if you think about who is writing
mm,
who is writing for TV and media, oh, these people are not people on a conscious journey. They're not on a spiritual journey. They
mm,
live in a normalized dysfunction. Therefore, their narratives and their storytelling are normalizing dysfunction. And so
mm-hmm.
the majority of the people that aren't on this journey will look at it and think it's just normalized, not dysfunctional. Whereas where I am, I can't watch anything anymore because I just see this is pure insanity.
Yeah, I think that's pretty common to people on this journey. Yeah, and the interesting part is it always seems like there's a select few in charge of these larger organizations. And I'm sure that's been the case for a long time, but there's always a select few, whether it's economically, governmentally, via enterprises. There's always a select few that kind of seem to run the show. Um, I do want to get to this next, so I do want to dive into the mirror concept a bit more.
Yeah,
Going back,
yeah.
we're going to keep talking about this orange situation and the fact that you start sweet, you go through a life, you become a little bit more bitter. I liked your analogy there, and so we have these mirrors through life that show us, hey, this slice of the orange or this part of the orange is bitter,
Right.
and we have these tools to help us kind of review that. So one of your latest posts, you wrote that, quote, loved and peaceful are simply your state you become as you dissolve all that is unloved and diseased. Seeking for love and peace outside leave us with the same unloved, diseased aspects inside. This is the whole blindness of how humans live. You will always meet yourself in the mirror of the school of life. And so that's sort of an example, or I guess a hierarchical structure of the fact that if we are bitter in the orange, someone or reality will play out in a way to show us, hey, Jonathan, David, you are bitter here. Time to fix it. Time to make it sweet
Yes.
again so we can squeeze it.
So in the relationship, which I think that was referring to, let's just say you are raised and you are physically abused as a child. Now you have an understanding that this is a normalized way. And so your nervous system and your understanding of love is to the degree of this form of abuse. On a level most people don't understand, you will match and attract someone who is going to literally give you that same treatment that you don't want because you want to be loved, but because that's what you are familiar to, your unconscious, subconscious, and your nervous system will attract the very lesson you need to learn to grow and evolve and heal that part of you which has normalized abuse. Unfortunately, a lot of people will go, and I deal with people who say, oh, I was in an abusive, toxic relationship. How long? Oh, it was about 6 years. Okay, so when did the abuse and the toxicity start? Oh, about after the first year. So you were in an
Right.
abusive, toxic relationship for how long? 5 years. Okay. Who stayed? Who allowed it? Who accepted that behavior?
Right.
So you don't see that you're so unloved within yourself because you felt so unloved as a child because all you got was abuse, that you accept this dysfunction as normality. Whereas if you knew the school and the mirrors, this person would come in, you would feel like this isn't loving behavior, and you'd go, no, no, no. And you'd set your boundaries, and if those boundaries are crossed, no, and you would walk away. Now you've learned your lesson in the mirror of life. Whereas most people, sorry, it says something there. Most people do not know they're seeing themselves in
Well, I
another.
guess that's an interesting point, though. I think a lot of people, I mean, myself included, it's sometimes that line is a bit blurry, isn't it? I mean, this is why we find people in these types of relationships because on the one hand, you're like, okay, this is too much. I'm being triggered. This isn't right for me. Your example is an extreme example, maybe, or maybe not so
Yes.
extreme, but the abuse. But then you also say on the flip side, if I'm on a spiritual journey, I do want this triggering. I want someone to point out the wounds. I want someone to show me I'm bitter here. How do you sort of find that line
So,
between the
so
two?
now, so now I'm going to explain a less obvious one. That was the extreme. And what we say is whatever upsets and triggers you is the work. So
Right.
the mirror is not triggering you. The mirror is showing you to you, and the trigger is the hurt and pain that the sour or bitter juice. So here's an example. I was not an academic. I was ridiculed at school and by brothers, and so I
Mm-hmm.
had a thought. I had a thought and belief about myself that I was stupid, wrong, bad, and no good. Fast forward, my first conscious relationship, my ex was smart. She had degrees in this and degrees in that. And sometimes, so let's put an example. One day she's in the kitchen and she says something. I feel something.
Uh-huh.
I feel the trigger. And I say, I'm triggered. And she stops and she comes to sit next to me. And this is how you navigate. And she says, what's up?
Mm,
I feel stupid.
mm,
She said, and she would say, you know, that's not true. You know where that comes from. So now I sit with my little boy, this inner child
mm,
work, and I work with him, and very quickly it dissolves. That's the way to deal with it in a conscious relationship. This is how it would play out without knowing how to navigate and translate. My girlfriend says something. The trigger triggers in me now, so I
mm,
don't have to face that pain and that hurt, that sour juice. I turn around and go, don't talk to me like an idiot. What do you think? I don't know what I'm saying. Don't talk to me like an idiot. Don't you know I know what I'm saying?
mm.
That's the projection of
It's very
protecting the
external.
stupid little
Mm,
boy. And so to stop the projection, to not protect the wound and then feel it. Okay, what is this? I can even ask the little boy, what are you feeling, little boy? And he said, I feel
Mm,
stupid. Okay. It's a very delicate way because we're so used to reacting.
mm,
There's so here's the mechanism. Viktor Frankl, who wrote a book, and he was in the concentration camps, and he said something like, in between stimulus and reaction, there is a window of opportunity to bring us to peace. And it's very difficult because the trigger is old pain and hurt. That's the sour, bitter juice in us from our childhood. Whatever triggers us, they are the teachers and mirrors, teachers' lessons showing us this juice. The trigger has to be
mm.
realized and not turned into a reaction and a projection. It has to be felt. And it's so instinctive because our whole life, again, everybody in the movies, everybody on the TV, they get triggered and they react.
Right,
Don't
right.
fucking talk to me like that. What are you saying? Do, 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 do.
And that's how
Everybody's
we've been trained, you could argue.
absolutely. Our parents did
Yeah,
it. They modeled projections. Our whole family, our schools, our teachers. Even if I talked in school, my teacher would get angry and react to me, which is a
yeah.
projection of their juice within them. So we've normalized utter unconsciousness. And as you start to go on this work, you realize how utterly crazy we've been. And
Mm,
everybody's doing this, and everybody thinks this is the way to be. Even today, I got into a discussion with someone, and I knew it was going to be a little delicate, and they started getting angry at me. And I
mm,
expressed very gently, what you are getting angry at is an identification with this narrative about a story in the world, and it's not where we are right here, right now. And
mm.
you want me to get angry just like you. And I said,
So it
that's
kind
not
of
where
brought it
I,
into the conversation, you feel.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I said, until you understand that, I'm not going to that place. I don't identify with the story you identify with. And he was desperately trying to get me to back a side in a war in this world. And I don't take sides. I just see what I see. And it was very interesting because to not divide and side, again, that's another part of being triggered. Is divide and conquer is the greatest way to get people to lose their power. And
Mm.
to not take a side is a very, very difficult stance to be when you just take a stance of unconditional perception.
Yeah, I think that's really, I mean, I feel like two major concepts or themes that came up, especially in the relationship conversation. The first really is that if someone comes at you where there's some intensity of emotion or even some communication, there's a part of you in that pause that can say, hey, this may not have actually anything to do with me. This is coming from your own internal situation, projection, something that I may have triggered, but really is not, uh, I'm not the source of that pain, of that feeling. And then I think the second thing that's really interesting is viewing these types of situations. And I think what's kind of tricky for people, like this type of hurt, this type of in that relationship, in that trigger, in that communication, actually maybe still in that same pause. I wonder if it's from the Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl's book, but even if it's not, in that pause of saying, wow, I'm actually grateful for this, like being thankful for the opportunity to show me, to show you, to show anyone, this is an opportunity for me to heal. I mean, how many of us in those type of situations stop, take a breath, and say, wow, I am so grateful for this opportunity to be shown where I can heal.
Well,
That's hard.
exactly that happened because in the middle of the communication, I saw behaviors in this gentleman who I know, which were my old behaviors. I saw I used to be like this. I used to be exactly like this. Therefore, instead of going into a judgment saying you're a fucking idiot, whatever, I have compassion for where this person is.
Yeah.
And a compassion is it better than me getting upset? And compassion means that I can be more gentle with him in the communication. But again, it's learning a whole new language of
Mm.
relating. And I relate to the world through the relationship I have with myself, i.e., the juice that I have in
I
me.
That's what I was gonna say. It's funny you said that because I think the compassion part is also, if we use the same mirror concept, I feel like my subscription is that anytime we judge or feel a certain way towards someone else, it's really partially how we feel about ourselves. I must not be good enough, or I'm angry about something, or I'm this and that. So when we judge or criticize or blame someone else, there's some part of us that's doing it to us, or we feel that about ourselves. And the easiest way to handle that situation is look externally, or judge or be critical externally.
Yeah, there's also to do with judgments and understanding is everybody is where they are on their journey. And if, let's say, this gentleman and this person is where he is on his journey, I understand that because once upon a time I wasn't this person.
Right.
Therefore, why is everybody else not allowed to be where they are?
That's a good
Because if
point.
I disallow them their journey, I now go into judgment. So knowing that everybody, wherever they are, could wake up and change their consciousness at any moment, like I did, like I see people doing, why can I not allow everybody? Now, how they are, I might not agree with their position or their, but I understand it. I understand where they are and why they are, and therefore I can not go into judgment and say it's okay. So where people are is okay. How I am about where they are, how I am
Mm,
is that's it.
yeah. No, and I appreciate that. And I think that's a really hard thing for us to do, but like you said, there's no right, wrong. I think for me and people on their spiritual journey, this is actually a question I want to ask you. Um, I think that fine line is sometimes a little difficult. Is how like in this work, which can be so difficult, so time consuming, so heart wrenching, so painful. Do you think that is this like a 24/7 job? How do we identify activities that bring us joy and just going through life and saying, okay, I'm also here to enjoy things? Because I know one of your other points is that we're really chasing a feeling, and the whole point is to be here to feel good. And so, how do we identify and delineate or differentiate between, hey, I just want to feel good or do things to feel good versus this is a distraction that's taking me away from the healing, the spiritual work, the switching from bitterness to sweetness? I think that's something I've heard come up a lot in conversation this week is people toying with the idea, okay, this is too much. I'm putting this off. And how much of that is exactly the challenge of the spiritual work, not wanting to do it or postponing it to some degree.
So I think I'm trying, I think I get what you're saying. The work is moment to moment to moment to moment to moment because your and my and everybody's unconscious unawareness are sour and bitterness has been perfected since we were children. Therefore, if I am not consciously aware and practicing my conscious awareness moment to moment,
Mm-hmm.
that sour, bitter, unconscious unawareness takes over. It's like a muscle.
Right, right.
So if I don't do the moment to moment conscious awareness, I will never have enough conscious awareness to find a level where I'm now in control.
Mm.
When I am unconscious and unaware, my ego, my identity, my personality, my suffering, my loop of all of that is in control. So that's the balance of building a strength of consciousness where my second nature is to be consciously aware.
Yeah, sounds like it's maybe the difference between being reactive and proactive. That's kind of how it feels.
Yeah, well, here's a good
Yeah.
one. A reaction, the word itself, break it down into two, reaction. I am reacting the same react of my act as the actor of my bad actor of my malpractice of my unconsciousness. Or I learn to respond. I have response ability. I learn to
Mm.
find the ability to respond consciously and not project and react. So there's a difference there where I now get to have more peace within myself instead of perpetuating the sour juice. Because if I respond consciously, that juice sweetens every time.
Yeah, I think I think that's a really important point. There's so many nuances to just this journey and trying to differentiate when to push, when not to push. I think the ironic thing is you would think that it's maybe difficult between someone who's on the journey and someone's not on the journey, and that conversation could be tricky. But I have found actually that the trickiest conversations are between two people on the journey, because there tends just to be this back and forth and focus on the healing, but in that healing requires constant triggering. And I guess my question as we kind of look to wrap up in the next few minutes, but one of the last questions would be, what's your advice? I mean, what would you say to people going on this journey who are either in the thick of it, they're in the pain, they're doing the work, and they're trying to remind themselves that there's light at the end of the tunnel, or they're trying to manage to see the joy and still do activities that bring them happiness while facing the hurt. So, what would you say either to your younger self or advice to someone kind of, I guess, earlier on in their journey?
And again, it is a journey. Life is a journey. And the journey that I've decided to take and we're talking about is a journey within the journey. I don't have to take this. I can live how I was living before I took this journey. And so now I know that I'm on this journey. I also know there is no result, end, reward that I get. It is a journey of enlightening, as inside me is getting lighter and lighter of the darkness of the juice. So it's kind of more fun where I get to the place where, as you say, yeah, I'm getting triggered, but let's say the triggers are that much shorter, that much lighter, that much softer, that much more gentle. Now I'm triggered and everything becomes an opportunity. Now I'm an alchemist. Now I'm an alchemist
Becomes
where
more like play.
I notice I am smooth riding this journey because I went through my hell, my dark night of the soul. I knew when I went on this journey that it does get better. But I also knew that I'm going to go through some serious pain and suffering and hell to do the work to get to a place where now, all right, it's that much more manageable. And life is really quite exciting because something happens like that. Okay, it is what it is. I'm okay with that. Can I be okay? I get it. That's what this is. You very quickly have learned to navigate and translate through the practice. This is practice. It's like when you learn to drive. Do you remember what it's like to learn to drive? Oh my God. And now it's unconscious, subconscious.
Right. Yeah.
That's the same with this. You're learning a whole new operating system. You've been learning a whole new, you had another operating system which is not serving you. So it's a journey. And if you put, the more you, same with any practice, if I dedicate and I'm disciplined, the more dedicated and disciplined I am, the quicker and easier it's going to be. And then now I can play with life. Now I can do everything and have fun. But again, it's up to you how much you want to be disciplined and follow that through. And the more you do, the quicker it becomes easier, but it is a journey.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the paradox here, right? Because I know when I first entered, I was like, okay, I've got all this I want to work on. I've got so much to focus on. And I was thinking about it with my logical brain. And I'm an engineer by degree. And I was like, okay, so I've got A, B, C, D. And I think the irony and the paradox of this whole life journey situation is that we're essentially, the goal is to shine light, using your example, to recreate the sweetness that became bitter. So the irony is that to change or to work or to improve on any of those things, the simplest, really only thing I have to focus on is bringing love and light to those, or sweetness to those parts of me that didn't get that before. And I think a lot of us miss that in our haste to fix, quote unquote, parts of ourselves. We use our old tactics, we use judgment, we use fear, we use types of motivation that we used in the old life, in the old world. And the funny thing is, it's really the simplest thing that you need. It's just to be able to look at all parts of yourself with loving compassion, acceptance.
And that is the simplicity of it. But what you're talking about, and it is wonderful, is the spiritual ego gets locked in the mind, and I've got to do this. And the ego is giggling.
Yeah.
Because it knows that if you knew how simple this was and you applied that, then the ego, it's not, you don't lose the ego, but now, like I said, you take control. So the ego loves it when we get into the engineer brain. All right, and it's laughing. So it is.
Totally.
It's you go through part of the journey is trying to figure it out. No, no, and I get it. I get it. It's a wonderful, smart, the spiritual ego. And again, now I can enjoy life and be in control, and I can do whatever I want to do and understand that the place I'm coming from is not seeking to get, gain, or attain anything, because you can't add to this and you can't take away from this. And that I have never knew in my life could ever exist. It's you can't even hold on to it, and it's intangible and it's ethereal, and it's this beautiful, oh, that happened. I did really well with that. Wow. Let's go back a year ago. Oh, that could have taken me weeks to get over. So that in itself, it's really very, 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 very unbelievable that you can go to places and then it is, you just get lighter again. So there was the Jesus Christ of quote, to be in this world, but not of this world. And then there's the Beatles quote, nothing is real, nothing to get hung about. So we've been getting distressed and upset and disturbed and insulted and offended by all these things that actually don't.
Yeah, once you reach that place of calmness and wholeness,
and then you enjoy it. Then it's an exploration and an excitement of doing whatever you want to do in life, and you're not seeking, wanting, and needing and trying to get, gain, and attain, because that's all coming from a wounded part of our childhood, and it's a journey to get to there. And then really what happens is you might have had ideas of what you want to do in life, and then I do believe, I was told by an amazing astrologer, Coyote Star Astrology, 7-8 years ago, if I work through all of my samskara and karma and all of my stuff, I will come out the other end and be a teacher. And I was like, okay. I was an actor at the time in Hollywood, and here I am now working with people all day long. I have an amazing book which is out. Here, look, blatant advertising.
There you go.
This book is going good guns, and it was the simplest way to express and explain how to translate and navigate the map. And I didn't know this was going to happen, but this was allowing this journey to just, where's this going? Oh, okay. Wow. It's really beautiful. I'm doing a lot of wonderful stuff, and I'm just, okay, this is what I've been brought to do, and I accept this journey. It's not what I ever thought I was going to do.
It's funny. I feel like that happens to so much of us, but honestly, I've really enjoyed this conversation. Just listening to you and working with you and this energy back and forth. I can sense this wholeness. I can sense a peace. I can sense this contentment, honestly, from you, like a freedom. It almost feels like a freedom. And I think that that's really cool for me, because I would argue, a bit earlier on in my journey, and it's like motivation, it's inspiration for someone like me, who I feel like I'm still using the engineer brain a little bit, but I'm like, okay, I've got all this darkness to shine a light on. I've got all this bitterness to make sweet, and talking with someone like you gives me inspiration to get there. So tell us about the book. Where do we find it? On Amazon?
Okay, so this is
Instagram.
This is the map. I'm on Instagram, and it just sets a link to Amazon. So the map, the navigation, and the translation to life. I made this book as simple and as easy, with no woo-woo, no spirituality, no over-articulation. And it really goes through everything I said: the patriarchy, the nuclear family, external validation, relationships, marriage, triggering. It's literally, how can I get everything? And I'm really, and again, this came to me I had this idea a few years ago, and literally in May, a voice came to me in my sleep. It literally said this: write the map.
Wow.
Write the map
directly.
Twice. And I went, okay. Okay. And it's getting amazing reviews, and I'm getting incredible people telling me how they're putting it into practice and how it's changing their lives. And it's just a beautiful thing. Okay. But that doesn't add to me. It's a
Mm.
beautiful thing, but it doesn't masturbate my ego to go, look at me, and people say it's amazing, you're selling it. I'm like, yeah, it's great. It's really good, but this is where I'm meant to be. And I still have me to deal with and me to work with. And this can't change that.
Mm.
But yes, sorry, the ultimate word is what you use is freedom. That's it.
Mm. I sense that. I sense that from you. And
It's
I'm sure the map will provide that for a lot of people. And man, this conversation, everything you post, everything you talk about is such an inspiration. So what can I say? I appreciate it. Appreciate you doing this and joining us. Thanks for sharing all your work and what you do. And I'm sure we'll follow you along. Your Instagram handle, David Dayan Fisher. Did I say it
Dayan
correctly?
Fisher, yeah. David Dayan
Da-
Fisher, Dayan, yeah.
David Dan Fisher. Yeah.
Go on.
I was going to say I'll post it here for people and a link to the map. But go ahead. You want to share more about
No,
Instagram or the map?
I was gonna say I appreciate you asking me to be on. I always enjoy communicating with people in regards to, l- like we've been talking about, assisting and everybody learning to grow and inspiring and enthusing each other. And
Mm,
we're all here to, as Ramdas said, we're walking each other home.
mm. I love it. That's powerful. Nice
It's
place to end,
very,
David.
very true.
Until next time. Thank you.
Yes, sir. All the
Talk
best.
soon.
Peace.
All the best. Peace.
Bye.